Welcome to you who come seeking sanctuary. Fountain Street Church, for more than 100 years, has offered this extraordinary place, this place in between, a place where you are free to be unsure of exactly who is right and who is wrong. This day, our service welcomes you to a little different order. In fact, we're starting just a minute or two early so that you might be aware of the scenario which will be played out for you today. Today, I welcome you to explore the various borders, spiritual, social, psychological, political, that exist in our world and that only this sanctuary can hold together. You'll be offered 4 voices, paired with 4 pieces of music, each uniquely tied to one of the borders with which this community has some connection. Now, typically you might think of a border as a place like between nations, and clearly that is one of the borders you will hear from this day. But we'll also hear from some borders which may be unfamiliar to you, a border as close as the border that is drawn on South Division Avenue in the Hartside neighborhood. A physical geography where people who come together with different understandings, abilities, opportunities, and struggles. And you will hear a voice and you will hear music from that border that will welcome you to understand, maybe for the first time, the great spiritual challenge that the border provides. We'll also hear from the border of love, the border of marital justice. And we'll hear from the border of the reservation, a border that exists within our nation's own borders. There are many, many more borders. What I want to suggest to you is that each one of them is an opportunity to disorient yourself from what you are sure you know to something of a humility which would invite your exploration of what you do not know yet about who we are and why we are here and how it is that we are to be truly helpful.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Elmer Chavarria, and I thank Fountain Street Church for giving me the opportunity to speak this morning. And I'm going to say it in Spanish and then I'm going to repeat in English. Nuestro mundo está lleno de fronteras. Están en todas partes. Our world is full of borders. They are everywhere. En la superficie, una frontera poquito divide a uno del otro. On the surface, a border merely divides one from the other.
But this is an illusion created by fear and why our separateness.
Una frontera es más que esto. A border is much more than this. Cada una de las fronteras nos hace una invitación para todos aquellos de corazones valientes. Every border makes an invitation to those with a courageous heart.
To enter in and take the seat of the student, to learn and know well with those who dwell and pass through, on the way to a place called home.
Thank you.
In the late 1990s, I was required as a part of my seminary education to attend a 2-week immersion into the border of Nogales, Sonora, Mexico, in which we were encamped and moved into a family's home, which did not speak my language, and who asked nothing more of me than to simply live with them in this borderland between the United States and Mexico. Today's message, crafted by 8 extraordinary people who have agreed to come and share their voice, whether musical or experiential, is a welcome to you to enter for a period of time into the border of their experience, to refrain, as was required of me, from deciding who was right and wrong, but to simply open yourself to the power of that place in between one and other.
Good morning, my name is Pablo Bello. I'm a journalist and I'm an immigrant. I'm gonna play a song for you. It's called Cantares. We translate it like songs. This is the verses were written by a poet Spaniard who fought against the fascist army of Francisco Franco in the Spain of the 1930s, when they were supported by Hitler and Mussolini. So this song is related to immigrants because it talks about the struggles with life, but also the strength that you had to have to confront these struggles. I hope you enjoy this song. Todo pasa y todo queda, pero lo nuestro es pasar. Pasar haciendo camino sobre la mar. Nunca perseguí la gloria, ni dejar en la memoria de los hombres mi canción. Yo amo los mundos sutiles, ingrávidos y gentiles, como pompas de jabón. Me gusta verlos pintarse de sol y grana, volar bajo el cielo azul, temblar súbitamente y quebrarse. Nunca perseguí la gloria. Caminante no hay camino, se hace camino al andar. Al andar se hace camino y al volver la vista atrás se ve la senda que nunca se ha de volver a pisar. Caminante no hay camino, sino estelas en la mar. Hace algún tiempo en ese lugar donde los bosques se visten de espino, soy la voz de un poeta gritar: caminante no hay camino, se hace camino al andar, golpe a golpe, verso a verso. Murió el poeta lejos del hogar, cubre el polvo de un país vecino. Al alejarse debieron llorar. Caminante no hay camino, ese camino al andar, golpe a golpe, verso a verso. Cuando el jilguero
cuando de nada nos sirve rezar. Caminante no hay camino, se hace camino al andar, golpe a golpe, verso a verso y golpe a golpe, verso a verso y golpe a golpe, verso a verso.
Good morning and welcome to Fountain Street Church. My name is Cindy Hicks Chavarria, and I'd like to give everyone a really warm welcome. I hope you feel as welcomed as I did when I came through the doors over 20 years ago, and I've been in and out ever since, and I joined the church more than 10 years ago, but have just recently become active here since my family's joined me. So I'm just grateful for the opportunity to participate and share a little bit about our family and what brought us through the doors. And this morning I'm talking about borders and what that feels like to live in between two different worlds. My husband is from a third world country, which is, we like to say, Guatemala. That's how they pronounce it there. And I'm from here. And basically, we encountered our first border experience when trying to get married. I met my husband more than 7 years ago, and I fell in love like many of you do. When you get those warm feelings and you're like, oh, what's next? You just want to try to tie that relationship together. And I know many of you here struggle with that issue. And we were refused a marriage license. My husband didn't have a little card with some special numbers on it, so they said we couldn't have a marriage license. So we took our money and went elsewhere. The next encounter that we had after getting married was the obstacles of driving, not being able to get a license. And he did have one, but they passed some new laws in our state because our government felt that people who were trying to file asylum cases or refugee status that wasn't quite fully completed were not eligible to drive while they're trying to figure it out. So our family has this whole new set of unique situation that we deal with. So everything from trying to pick the kids up from school, trying to run multiple businesses, trying to, if I'm sick, get the kids to the hospital, that all brings its own unique set of borders and stress. So, if our family gets pulled over, it's not an issue of just getting a ticket. It's what's going to happen to our family. So the reason I go and I speak up and I tell people about our family is because I want people to understand that 1 out of 5 kids lives with the fear of having their family separated between our borders. And I want people to understand what that feels like. After getting married, we visited over 10 different attorneys. All of them said the same thing. Unless you would just want me to take your money and pretend to do something for you, there's nothing we can do. So our way to deal with that frustration is to share our story, share our family with you, and hope that you can help advocate for us. And one of the biggest obstacles that we face sometimes are family vacations. And typically, a lot of our families look forward to visiting a campground or going places. Our family goes to Washington, D.C. to protest, to march, to say, hey, we're a family. Please recognize that we belong together, that we need the opportunity to stay as one. Please don't separate us. And one of the harder things that I find is when it's time to meet my in-laws on the other side of the border. And most families can go together and come back. Well, only some of us can go and only some of us can come back. So that means I must take my bundle of my invisible backpack and stuff as much love in it as I possibly can and bring the love from a son to his mother. And that is beyond difficult. Not only I feel, part of me feels blessed and cursed at the same time. I'm lucky to have the opportunity to bring the love there. But at the same time, I feel ashamed that my country will not allow us to just be as one. So I come and I ask for support always, to lift us up, to be regular participating Americans. I always ask people to define what that is. What does it mean? Can you not work hard enough? Can you not be good enough? We all just want the opportunity to live with dignity and respect. And I just want to pay tribute to my 2 little girls up there. One of the things that our family really would like to do, my husband has raised my oldest daughter for most of her life. And he would like the opportunity to adopt our oldest daughter, but because we live in between that border, we're not able to still legally become as one. But our hearts are all connected, and we're connected here with you at Fountain Street, and we are just so grateful for all the support that we've received from your love and your friendship. And I just welcome you to get to know us. If you'd like to hear more about my husband's story, he will share that later afterwards. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm David Larkinson. I have a remarkable friend that I met in the 80s who has worked all her life in hospice care as a musician, a harpist and a singer. And I was very inspired by her work, but recognized the toll it took on her to help people across the border between life and death. And so I wrote a piece for her. Her name's Therese, and the piece is called Peace for Therese.
Good morning. Borderlands. Jason Hubbard, who I've known for over a decade, asked me to speak about the borderland in which I live. By this, he meant the border where I am married in the eyes of my family and community, but not in the eyes of the state of Michigan. For a year and a half now, I have been living in this borderland with my amazing wife, or as other people feel more comfortable calling, my partner. I cannot speak of borders in black and white terms. The world is not that simple. The space I hold is indeed a borderland in which multiple identities fight, support, and negotiate with each other. I am gay, and I will always fight for my rights. But I also scan a room before saying, "This is my wife," and sometimes even choose not to come out. I have the luxury of passing as straight. I hope for a world where I can be comfortable as my whole self with friends, family, coworkers, and strangers. Borders. My dad is from England, and my mom is a Jewish Latina. To be mixed is a strange thing. I can drink tea at 4 o'clock and talk about the weather, then go dancing all night and hold my share of tequila. I am exotic, too loud, and the diversity higher. but also too light and whitewashed to fully blend in with my Latina sisters. I am white, but I am also not white. I am Jewish, but I am also not Jewish. My Costa Rican grandmother, who taught me how to make tamales, speak Spanish, and be proud of my heritage, threw me out of her house for being gay. Borders. I can't talk about borderlands without talking about disability. I have multiple disabilities, but I can hide them in an able-bodied world by jokes, apologies, today's just not my day, or I'm sorry I didn't get enough sleep. When crossing over into disability communities, however, I do not have to apologize for quirky behavior, trouble communicating, and can even be proud of those identities. But if my wife, who has multiple sclerosis, has a relapse and is hospitalized, I am not considered immediate family and do not have a voice as her legal spouse. I cringe inside when I have to mark single instead of married on paperwork. Marriage is not just about a legal piece of paper, just like family is not just about blood relation. It is about committing to building a bridge together to wherever the future takes us. So I invite you all to join me in building a community that does not force people to tear themselves apart or pick shores, but rather embraces and celebrates the contradiction and ambiguity of these in-between borderlands. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Jacob Bullard, and I am a songwriter and moved here to Grand Rapids about 2 years ago from Traverse City, Michigan, where I grew up, and been living on the corner of Division and Williams, right down this Division Avenue at I live and help run an art gallery down there. I also work at a restaurant, and I just got a job as a valet, so doing that this afternoon. Living in the neighborhood has completely changed my life in ways I surely don't still fully understand, but it's really incredible, and I really appreciate this morning and being here, and I think it's a wonderful exercise, and I'm very honored to be part of it. This is a song I wrote called Sometimes. Sometimes the daytime can seem like the night. Sometimes the night is the only thing that ever feels right. Sometimes I see you, sometimes I don't. It's the time in between that it goes by so slow. Sometimes love, it can feel like a game. Sometimes love is the answer to all of our pain. Sometimes you're with me, sometimes you're not. It's the time that you are that I sure like a lot. Well, I've heard the body can not tell a lie, but that words change their meaning in the course of the night. Sometimes everything can feel kind of thin. Sometimes it's cold and the lights kind of dim. Sometimes the blues are all I can sing. Sometimes the words I say, they don't mean a thing. Sometimes everything gets cast to the wind, so I collect all the signs and I wait to begin. Sometimes a penny can seem like a lot. Sometimes words aren't enough, but they're all that I've got. Sometimes it feels like I'm digging for change. Sometimes all that I want is for things to remain, all held together and tied up in bows. That's just not how it is. Don't take much to know. Can't tell a river which way to flow. You just lay yourself down, you let yourself go. Oh, you let yourself go. Sometimes I wake straight from a dream. It's the days that I do that I tend to believe. Me and you, we could make quite a run through the world right before it all comes undone. Sometimes I can feel so alone. Sometimes lonely's the only place that I wanna go. Sometimes it's black, sometimes it's white, sometimes it's right in between, and it doesn't seem right. Oh, it doesn't seem right. Sometimes my thoughts can be kind of loose. Sometimes I feel like it's just no use to study the figures and redraw the lines that have already been drawn time after time. Try to attain what cannot be defined. It's sometimes a question that weighs on my mind. So as for me, what can I say? I'm just a daydreaming poor boy, and I'm well on my way.
Good morning. I'm Jamie. I want to start by saying I give all praises to the Most High God of Israel, who I serve in all things. I also want to thank Christ, his son, for being a light for me and for being an atonement for my sins and for delivering me from the captivity of the physical, mental, and spiritual borders of the Heartside neighborhood. I was asked to speak about the borders of the Heartside neighborhood. These borders extend from Walpi to Fulton and from Ionia to Jefferson, give or take a few blocks. I entered these borders at an early age of 14. This was due to drugs in the home and verbal and some physical abuse. My mother lived and died tragically as an addict. I came to know the borders of the Heartside neighborhood as a prison. Being incarcerated in prison at one point in my life, I realized that the setup is the same. I was kept within these walls by giving me enough help to keep me stuck inside these walls. In my time within the Heartside neighborhood walls, I had been stabbed numerous times. I had been shot. I was beaten into a coma while 5 months pregnant. I had been raped in these walls, jumped on countless times. I became an addict within these walls. I have also made friends within these walls, some with situations like mine, others worse. I have lost people within these walls. One of my best friends was murdered, sodomized, and left naked in these walls. I learned not to trust anyone inside these walls. I was treated bad by people who I sought help from within these walls. People judged me without knowing my history. They judged me without caring that I slept in an abandoned building when I was 14. They judged me not knowing that I used to walk by people's homes, watching them have dinner with their family or having movie night, wishing I was a part of their family. I was judged, although these people called themselves Christians, but turned their backs on me. So I did not trust anyone, not a single living soul. It was a lonely place to be within them walls. I was broken, physically, mentally, and spiritually within these walls. Within these walls, I found a light by the grace of the Most High God. You see, the Most High brought me through the doors of Heartside Ministry. When I came through those doors, I was broken, lost, and almost defeated. Almost defeated, but not defeated. I simply came through these doors to use the restroom, and I found so much more. I found a family, I found love. I began to learn how to trust again. They loved me right where I was at in those walls. I found a program through Heartside that allowed me to obtain and maintain housing. This was in 2007. I enrolled in college and obtained my macro requirements in social work and criminal justice. I started volunteering at Heartside Ministry, which I often referred to as the light within the prison system. I first started volunteering in the computer lab, then the small GED program. I put all my faith in the Most High God. I started keeping His laws to the best of my ability, and I referred to Deuteronomy 28:2, and all these blessings shall come upon thee and overtake thee, if thou shalt hearken unto the voice of thy Lord thy God, and I have been blessed so much. 6 months ago, I got hired as part-time staff, as a GED literacy program coordinator, and I wrote a grant for the program, actually, and I presented it between 2 different foundations, and they not only blessed me with the money I asked for, but both of them doubled the money that they were going to give to me for my program. So now I'll be hired in as full-time staff and with benefits and a raise. The reason that I came back into the Heartside neighborhood, it is because it is still people trying to break free from the bondage of them walls. Education and seeking first the kingdom is what I live by today. I thank God for bringing me through these borders. Because the same borders that held me captive are the same borders that helped set me free. Thank you.
Good morning. I grew up in these walls. Saw Frank Zappa here. But I also saw Red Robes singing Here We Come A-Wassailing on Christmas. And I left for a time. I had the great good fortune to live in the Black Hills of South Dakota. And from that beautiful, beautiful place, I also had the great good fortune to spend time in places that were not so beautiful. Just on the border of the hills, there's a place called Hot Springs, where I sat and played and drummed with many elders who were in the Veterans Administration there at the hospital. And they were natives, but they could not go back to where they were born, because even though they were born Lakota, they were taken as children, most of them before the age of 2, and raised in boarding schools run by the Catholics and the Mormons, who took the stipends from their being a male child. And when they were 18, they were dropped off back into the reservation. They couldn't speak the language. They knew nothing about their own culture. Most of them had been abused, and most of them found that by becoming a veteran, they would find a place that would take care of them. But some of them found that prison was the place that they would be taken care of. And I had the great, great good fortune to be taken by some of these elders into the reservation to Pine Ridge, because I knew some songs. And I sat down with the Warrior Society, and they asked me to drum with them, some of the elders. And the young people were a little bit skeptical because, you see, I'm not a native of there or here or anywhere. I'm Indonesian and I'm Dutch. I'm a refugee, and we were brought here, and I was born in this country. And I sang with these young men. And while we were singing, Grandfather American Horse, who must have been 90 years old, sat down with us. And he sat down and he said, "Doesn't anybody know a song that's not a powwow song?" And I said, "I know a song." And I sang a song, and he started to cry. And he said, "How do you know this song?" I said, "Tonkashala, grandfather, this song was taught to me by a Norwegian woman who wasn't allowed to learn this song because she was a foreigner, and she learned this song from a Blackfoot woman who wasn't allowed to learn this song because she was a lesbian, who learned this song from a grandmother who wasn't allowed to learn this song because she was a woman, who learned it from a woman who wasn't allowed to learn this song because it was a man's song, but she learned it from her husband, who died in the Vietnam War." And this is that song. And as I sang that song, Grandfather cried, and he said, "I haven't heard that song since before Wounded Knee." And one of the young men said, "You see, Grandfather, they even steal our songs from us." And Grandfather looked at him and said, "Don't you hear the words? Wani Cielo, he is all around us. Mystery is everywhere. Mystery is like spirit, and spirit is like the butterfly. And the butterfly doesn't see a Norwegian woman. The butterfly doesn't see a lesbian. The butterfly doesn't see a woman or a man, a veteran or a conscientious objector, or a prisoner, or white, or black, or red, or yellow. Mystery flies above us like a butterfly and doesn't see the state line as we leave the reservation. And as it flies over to Mexico, it doesn't see the border. It just sees home, and home is all around us. This is that song. Cada día eto kagape shekiayo wahe wache wahelo wanichelo wakadanga ho wanichelo wakadanga ho wanichelo wakadanga ho wanichelo hey hey oh wakadanga ho chimala hey hey wakadanga ho wanichelo hey hey oh wakadanga ho wanichelo wakadanga ho wanichelo wakadanga ho wanichelo hey hey oh wakadanga ho chimala hey hey wakadanga ho wanichelo hey hey oh wakadanga ho wanichelo wakadanga ho wanichelo wakadanga ho wanichelo hey hey oh wakadanga ho wanichelo wakadanga ho wanichelo wakadanga ho wanichelo hey hey oh
Mitakoyasu. We are all related. The organization, remember, began originally with trips to Agua Prieta, Mexico, just across the border from Douglas, Arizona. We were taking volunteers down to build houses for the thousands who flooded to the border after the passage of NAFTA, with the promise of jobs at American factories paying $1 per hour. I use the term houses loosely. These were shelters made from pallets turned on their sides, covered with cardboard, and roofed with tarps or whatever material was handy. We made 3 trips there. And then we were told about Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota. It was half the distance, there was no language barrier, and no difficult border crossings. 17 years later, we are the oldest nonprofit on Pine Ridge, standing in solidarity with and serving the Oglala Lakota people. Each year, 1,200 to 1,500 volunteers from every state in the Union and every inhabited continent come out to work with Remember and learn about Lakota culture and spirituality. They come as individuals, families, and groups from colleges, high schools, and churches, and these include 100 churches and institutions from the state of Michigan and a dozen from the city of Grand Rapids. The conditions on Pine Ridge are grim. 80 to 90% unemployment year-round. A third of the houses have no running water or sewer. Many are without electricity. They have 8 times the United States rate of diabetes, 5 times the rate of cervical cancer, twice the rate of heart disease, and a life expectancy which is the lowest in the United States of America and the second lowest in the entire Western Hemisphere. It is true that most of the people on Pine Ridge are not living in cardboard shelters, but Agua Prieta is not surrounded by the richest country that has ever existed on the face of the earth. Pine Ridge is. And the children of Pine Ridge have access to technology and television that shows what life is like on the other side of that reservation border, and they know that it's not available to them. And so there is a teen suicide rate on Pine Ridge that is 4 times the national average, and they have a 68% school dropout rate. But statistics only tell a small portion of my experience on Pine Ridge. It's the people, always the people, who tell the story. So let me take you across that border to meet 2 of my friends who are also my heroes. His name is Kelly Lookinghorse, and his life has been a real contradiction. The first half was spent drinking and drugging. He was part of the takeover of Alcatraz Island in 1969 and the Wounded Knee Uprising in 73. He hated white people. He fought in bars and sat in prisons. The second half of his life, he's worked in drug and alcohol programs. He's organized a powwow in a nearby white community that has a history of overt and violent racism. He and his wife, Susie, teach Lakota arts and crafts to young people, and he is often a guest speaker for the volunteers at Remember. His name is Kevin Pourbaix. He's one of my oldest friends on the res. I met him the first trip we made out there. Kevin's been living in a wheelchair for nearly 30 years. When he was 18, he was shoved out of the second-floor window of a Denver hotel during a drunken party that turned ugly. His back was broken, his legs shattered. 2 years before that, his older brother Timothy was shoved out of a car drunk and froze to death. He was 18 years old. A few years before that, his oldest brother Gordon was murdered in a knife fight. He was 18 years old. Kevin's younger brother was in prison for manslaughter, was released, and within a month was back in prison. When I first met Kevin, he lived in his wheelchair. He had no home. Then he met Josephine Standing Soldier, and he moved in with her and her family, and they have a son, Timothy Gordon. Kevin has been in and out of alcohol rehab programs all his life. He's been a fairly frequent overnight visitor at the Pine Ridge Jail for public drunkenness and fighting. He was sober the last time I saw him, but nobody's betting that it's going to last. So why is Kevin my friend and my hero? It's easy to understand why Kelly might be, but why Kevin? Kevin's my hero because, in spite of everything he and his people have been dealt, and with all his flaws and weaknesses, he gets up every morning and faces the day. And he laughs with his son, and he laughs at himself, and he survives for another day. And that is the strength and the beauty of the Lakota people who live just across the border on Pine Ridge Reservation. They are survivors. These are people who have taken terrible adversity and struggled with it. Not always won, but always struggled. And they survive. Amen.